These days, it seems pretty obvious, at least to me, that the decline of our education system in the United States has mirrored the decline in our culture, which is really, really not good for the American people because education is kind of an insurance against losing your rights. What the heck am I talking about? Well, today I decided to tackle the subject of education, and it is very near and dear to me. I have a family member who works in education. I've always respected education a ton. You can probably tell from some of my previous videos. And I love communication. And I think it's one of those key principles that needs to exist in culture. And education is one of the best platforms for using communication most effectively. And we just aren't doing that. I mean, when you break it all down, it really is just incredibly simple. Now, I said education is insurance against losing rights. What I mean by that, if you can think about it from a more, vague perspective, is that the more you learn, especially about your environment, especially about the politics of your environment, the more you realize that you have rights. You have things inherent to you and every other human being that need to be upheld and kept. And only through educating yourself can you give yourself the ability to work against keeping the work for keeping those rights. It's no mystery why dictatorships around the world and throughout history have kept information from their citizens. And it's because information, knowledge is extremely powerful and can empower someone to do something about their condition. And those people don't want that. Dictators don't want that to happen. And it's very telling that a citizenry will relent to that to some degree for a time. And honestly, I think something very similar, or at least parallel, is happening in our culture. A lot of people who voted in the most recent election as of this video were, I want to say, obviously misinformed. I mean, nothing screams misinformed more than looking up a person's policies after you voted for them. And that can be entirely attributed to our education system not functioning as well as it should. And it hasn't for quite some time. It can be hard to remember that when the United States had the world's foremost excellent education system, we became a superpower. Our country, you know, raised the tides of all ships and we became the leader of the pack, so to speak. And it's funny how we got away from that principle by basically just being, arrogant collectively. And it's hurting us. And it's hurting us now because very much so, education was a key principle and a certain subset of people losing their rights very recently. And you can chalk that up to the people in power hiding information, keeping us from being educated about it properly. And so they got away with their plan, which is really interesting because their plan also somehow seems to involve the decline of our entire system. You see, it's not that education is the catalyst for our system breaking down. It's that it's the signifier that's the that you're least able to deny. And there's two things that people can agree with, the American people can agree with now who have seen it happen over so many years. They agree that our education system is in decline, and they also agree that our culture is in decline as well. And nobody ever seems to want to pull on the thread that those things are connected. Of course, they're connected. Nations throughout history have prospered immensely from a well-educated citizenry, and we've seemed to have forgotten that. I mean, we are still going back and forth on the principle of how to keep children safe in schools. This is a meaningful, long-standing, very valuable institution, and we just neglected it. And it's bad because that neglect is revealing a lot of hideous things about our country, things we haven't dealt with yet, things that we have to deal with in the immediate, and things that we have to deal with carefully. And we're not addressing any of those concerns, and it's merely because we just don't know. And as I said, I'm a huge advocate for education. Knowledge is crucially important. I mean, I don't think you would ever find anyone on the streets of America who say they regretted learning the alphabet. I mean, there are still children in school who complain about whether or not they're going to use algebra later on in their lives. We walk around saying that we should teach kids, coming out of high school anyway, closer to adult age, financial literacy and critical thinking, which kind of begs the question, why weren't we teaching those things already? Why? Because education wasn't a priority. And one of the things that may attribute to that is that we always view education as an expensive endeavor. But when you invest in education, you're investing in something solid regardless. And on top of that, the problems with misinformation in the media and people being confident about their misinformation and disputing obvious things that can be disproven. I mean, can you explain the decline in our education system any better than the fact that there was a flat earth society? And no offense to anybody who was a part of that society, but we proved the earth wasn't flat. This is what education is supposed to do. It's supposed to give us the baseline necessities of what we need psychologically to function into the world. And I guarantee it's valuable even if you don't think it isn't. When I talk about education, I'm not talking about universities. I'm not talking about the institutions themselves. I'm talking about the aspect of knowing something and just how valuable it is for everyone within the confines of the system to know how it works. I guarantee you this. If we did put an emphasis on that, if we did make changes and stress that we need to teach everyone these principles, we would see positive changes immediately. And I do mean immediately. And maybe one day education will be what I always wanted it to be, especially when I was a child. Always a rewarding experience. But hey, all I know about education is that this country did it great at one point. I know because I'm able to read and write. But we just stopped emphasizing that lately. And it's really, really led to some bad things coming along and spiraling out of control, not the least of which was democracy itself. And all I can say is that I feel like that's worth fighting for. But you got to know how to fight. And that's what education, to me, is all about. Now, I know some of you are probably wondering why I came out with this one early. I did this one early because I'm going to have a surprise coming up. And, with the year ending, I thought it was just good to go out on this note and another. So stay tuned, like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a comment. It's always welcome. I'm happy to start a conversation, and I'll catch you guys next time.